Alrighty. Hey everybody, Steve here, the retired hobby tech guy, and we're going to turn the volume down, but we're going to bring up the action because what we're going to end up doing, if you have big prints, here we go. Forgive the little green modeling filling solution here on our Hulk, but if you're doing some big prints, you might have to cut down your model, and with that, we've had to do that a couple of times. Here's another one. So this guy used to be if I get him back so you can get at least some shadows on him. This guy used to be a 32 millimeter, and so I had to cut and do some stuff. This guy was actually printed all in one piece, but when you start getting into the larger prints and doing that, you might have to cut up your models. So that's what we're going to end up doing, is practicing on MeshMixer on how to cut up those models. And maybe even it's not even for big prints. Maybe it's just because you have problems printing like the all-in-one thing and you lose some details. And with that, you might want to cut these up. So what we're going to be doing, and I'm no pro at this, okay? Let's just start off right there. I'm going to take a drink. You smash the like and subscribe button, and we'll drive on with that, okay? You might be asking, where's my latte? It's a little bit later in the morning, so I've already had that. With that, we're going to use MeshMixer. You can find the link in the description box down below. I'm using it with Mac. And yeah, I'm not a pro in any way, shape, or form. This is actually, for me, this is a way that I can practice, and I was pissed off at the point where I was watching people do this on YouTube and social media, whatever, how to use MeshMixer and how to cut up models and this, and they went so darn fast, I was like frustrated, because when people know how to do that stuff, they tend to go fast and they don't explain, well, hey, go to the right-hand side or left-hand side or whatever. So, yeah. We got a comment from Bubble Wrap Oracle, have been subbed for ages. Well, cool. Thank you, dude. For those of you, I've been around for a minute on YouTube, and it started a long time ago. Currently, I have 235,942 views on my videos. And you might be looking and saying, well, how is that possible? You only have so many videos. I started way back when I started doing prepping and gun and gear review videos, and then all of that kind of crashed when doing gun and gear review videos was deemed a bad thing. And yeah, so there's a whole backstory on that, but we won't get into it. And then kind of got into drones, kind of got into, moved over here to Korea, sold everything, brought a couple suitcases, and boom, here we are, retired in Korea. But now I got into 3D modeling. I did 3D resin, and now I'm into FDM printing, and of course, I want to do bigger bottles. So I found that the usual slicer programs, they're good, but they have some limitations when it comes to cutting up models, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit. But what I found through the recommendations of other people is that MeshMixer is a great way to do that. So with that said, let's just jump right into MeshMixer. Autodesk MeshMixer, MM. So with MM here, what we have is our work plane area. We have some options. You can import, open, keyboard shortcuts. You can import a bunny. We'll import the bunny, and then we import a sphere or import a plane. And so with this, you could import some 3D models, and then you could play with that. Now over here on the left-hand side, again, you could do import. We have MeshMix, which if we actually had or opened up a work plane, then we could select that. But we have select, sculpt, stamp, edit, analysis, shaders, export. Primarily what we're going to be using is select, a little bit of, we'll do the MeshMix later, and pretty much the edit and maybe even the analysis and export. So that's kind of a quick little rundown on that. So if we were going to import something, what we can end up doing is using the import. We're just going to import the bunny, which is already preloaded, and there's your bunny. Yeah, it's not real exciting, but this is going to be the baby steps on how we can cut this model up into different pieces. So that way, if we scale up a model and with that it's too large, or we're having problems printing it out because it's got so many details and we want to minimize the amount of supports that are used, which more supports means wasted filament. So if I had a ton of supports on here, I would definitely have to support this ear, that ear, a little bit under here. But if I wanted to, what I could end up doing is like cutting this ear and cutting this ear off and then put those onto the build plate, and then I wouldn't need any supports. So save a little bit of support material. So even on smaller items, this can come in useful. Let's see. After you import the bunny, don't forget to put it back in the box. Yes, or in the hat. Is it the hat? Pull the bunny out of the hat. Maybe we'll put it back into the box, or putting a bunny in a box. Yeah, we won't even go there. So anyway, it ends up we're going to be doing some stuff here, and we've imported this. And I want to go over a few different things. If we go up top, there is a menu item, and you have some different things. Like you could show the wireframe of your bunny, and I think we'll leave that there. The other thing that we could end up doing is showing boundaries. I don't really know what that does, so we're just going to tag that off. The other view that you could end up doing is showing the grid, which is the grid on the bottom, which actually I like the grid because it kind of gives you some type of reference. Show the printer bed. You could actually put in your dimensions on this. And I'm not sure how to do that, so we're not even going to worry about that right now. We'll do that in another video. And then you also have your orthographic view and your transparent target. Transparent target, I don't even know what that one does. But I like this grid because you can look up inside of this, and if you have the other view, which is the printer bed, then what you end up doing is you can't see past that printer bed plane. And so if you're doing some things and rotating around and trying to do cuts or whatever it is, that ends up being a little problematic. So I don't like showing the printer bed. I don't really care about the printer bed because now I can move around, and I'm doing a right click and drag. And if I do left click and drag, I don't get anything. If I use my center mouse, I can kind of move this around. And if you have your trackpad, you can pull in and out with 2 fingers. And I think that's pretty much it, all I can do with the trackpad. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the Con Air reference. Yeah. Somebody gets a gold star for today. So anyway, let's drive on and we'll talk about what we need to do to cut this model out. And again, what we're going to end up doing is we could select, and this is going to bring up a window on this left-hand side. And so we look at the top and it's automatically defaulted to brush. And then the other selection is lasso. So we're going to take a look at the brush feature first, and then we'll look at lasso, and then you can make a decision on which to use for your best purposes. So we get down here, we have the sphere brush. You got some other options. I just leave it at default, and then we can change the size. I mean, look at that, that is huge. But we can change the size to this to whatever size we want. And I found that, like on this instance, this size for that paintbrush is pretty good, or the sphere brush. Now what we're going to do, let's say we want to take this ear, and let's kind of zoom in here. And what we want to do is to paint an area, and within that area is going to be our cut line where we do our planar cut. So we're going to go ahead, and you'll see it just fills in the triangles and the polygons, and you're going to have to rotate this around to get and connect it like so. And you don't have to get so crazy with it that you're like, oh, we got that little piece right there, and freak out about it. No, you don't need to worry about that. You just need enough room to be able to put your planar cut, and you'll see why, because this will it'll almost become transparent. So you won't see a lot of orange here, but you will see your planer cut when we get to that. So we've done that right there, and I think we're good to go. So now what we're going to end up doing is we're going to go up to edit, and we're going to go down. You've got all of these things, and we're going to go down to plane cut. So plane cut is similar to what we see in slicing programs, where you can have the entire plane cut the model. And the problem is that usually with the planer cut is it'll cut everything that's on that plane. Well, when you paint the item like this, the planer cut will only cut within that highlighted area. So I'll show you what we're talking about. Now, here's another thing we can end up doing is, so we've got that, and we noticed how, remember how I was telling you how it really barely graded out? Well, now what we're going to do is we're going to left click and drag in the center, basically the center where we did that painting, and you want to stay within that place that we painted, because if you go above that, you won't be able to get their cut. You'll have to redo it again, and so I'm just going to save you some time because nobody explained this to me. It's like I painted it, but I painted it really small, and then when I did my cut like this, it ended up, it just wasn't working, so I was really frustrated until I started going through it and realizing, hey, here's how you do it. It has to be within that painted area. So I'm going to go ahead, I've been holding the left click, and if I take that off, and now we can see how these are a little discolored, and then of course you get the coloring on here, and then you have some controls. So you can move this to an area. And so that's why your painting needs to be big enough and that you've got some reference. So like, about here and up here that we know what we need to do. And then you could even rotate this on the different axes. So we're just going to keep this, let's just say about right there, because that looks good, because we want to take this bunny ear, and we want to put it on the build plate so it doesn't need any supports. So that's what we're assuming. So we're going to go back up here to the top left, because apparently people who do how-to videos don't tell you how to do this, and they go so fast that it's like, what the hell where did you go, what did you click, or whatever. That's why I'm going to go slow and explain it, because idiots like me need help. So anyway, you go up here to the plane cut, and you have a cut type. And what we want to do is you can cut and discard half, or you can keep both. We're going to assume that you're going to keep both. Okay, so we'll just click that. Remeshed fill, we're going to leave that. You have no fill, minimum fill, fixed fill. We're just going to leave it on the default of remeshed fill. And we're going to hit accept. Okay, it's done. And the reason I like putting on the polygons on the map is that now you can see the line of where that cut is. I really wish MeshMixer would have like maybe a green line to indicate that yes, you did cut the model, but there's another step that we have to do. And this is really frustrating because people didn't explain this on the other YouTube videos that I was watching. So now you've done your cut, but it's not finalized. And so now you need to tell MeshMixer to separate those two parts away from each other, if that makes sense. You think if you cut it, it's done. If you cut an apple in half, the two halves fall apart. You need to, basically this is saying where I want to cut, I'm confirming that, and then when you have to separate the pieces, you're actually doing the cut. So that'll make a little bit more sense. And to do that, we have to go down to the left-hand side, and we go down to edit, and you've got, duplicate, transform, all these things. But we got to come down here to separate shells. And that's how they call it. So it's kind of weird because it's like separate shells. I mean, the little graphic off to the left of that, that we see right there looks, that looks kind of makes sense. But we're going to go ahead and click separate shells, and boom. Now we've got a couple of things that popped up. Notice that we got this window here, and now we have our bunny ear, which is highlighted here. And if we click this one, that is the rest of the bunny body. So we do indeed have our two pieces. And yeah, so now we're good to go. And another thing on this is what we can end up doing. Let's say the bunny ear is highlighted or the body's highlighted. Let's say I don't want to see the ear anymore. I can go ahead and click that. It'll make it transparent. And then when I, excuse me, when I click on the bunny, on the body, then we get, hey, that ear is gone. It's not gone. You just can't see it. So we go back down here and we can see it. Now, there's a couple of things that we can end up doing, and one of those is exporting. So let's say that is the perfect cut that I want. I can either click that part or I can click over here in the object browser. And then once I do that, now I can export this. So I go down to the bottom left to where it says export here. I'll click that. And we've got a couple of options. We can save it as a number of different formats, OBJ, STL. I just leave it on the binary format, STL. You have 3MF. I mean, there's different things that you can do, but this is the default, so plain, simple, works. I can import that file into slicers, and I haven't had any problems. So we're going to call this the Bunny Ear 1. And we're just going to put this, let's put this on our desktop. And we'll make a new folder and we'll call it Bunny. And so there it is, and boom, it has saved it. If we need confirmation of that, we could actually go up to, where is our Bunny file? And there it is. I know it's kind of messed up, but yeah, there's the Bunny file there. There it is. So there's our Bunny file there, and we're good to go. So that's how you can cut an item and how you can export it. So if I wanted to export the rest of this file, I could go down to export, do the same thing, and we'll call this body 1. It is already defaulted to the Bunny file folder that we had set up before. And we can do that. And of course, there we have our 2 files. Now there's another thing that is interesting because I cut up a bunch of models and trying to follow other people on the interwebs on how to use MeshMixer. And it's like, well, if you highlight both of these things, so let's just do Shift and we'll click both of those, or we could click one item, hold Shift and click the other. Now, both of those have been selected. And my thinking is you have 2 different files here, or however many different files. We select all basically. And if we go down to the bottom left and we hit export, we come up with the same thing. And we'll just call this all, and we can save that. It saves it, boom, we're good to go. But the problem is when we get into, let's open this up in Creality app or print. And what we end up seeing is this right here, where we end up seeing loading of model file has failed. So for some reason on Mac, file does not contain any geometry data. Okay, so we're just kind of screwed in that aspect. But if we end up, like, let's take just one of these, let's take the bunny ear, and let's go back to our file folder, and let's go back to our Creality print, just to prove to you that this actually works. So we know that exporting multiple items in one file, it's not going to work. So we're just going to move that to the trash. But let's just do our bunny ear. We drag that into Creality print, and sure enough, boom, there is our print. And then we can go ahead and we can orientate it. We can do all the stuff that we want to do. We could end up scaling this up, let's say 600%. And boom, there it is. We have our bunny. Now, obviously, it's a low poly, it's a low poly bunny ear, but that is how we can do those things and scale them up into our slicer program. There's another way that we can end up slicing or cutting and using that planar cut. And we're going to select the ear here. And what we're going to end up doing is going to select, and again, on that left-hand side, let's see if we can make this so I don't get in the way. On this left-hand side, have select, And remember, we did the brush feature to highlight the area of an area, and within that boundary, we're going to put that planar cut. Well, what we can end up doing here is going up to the top and select lasso. So we just go ahead and toggle that, and now we have lasso. Leave all of this stuff the same, and now what we're going to end up doing is we're going to left click and hold, and then we let go, and that will do that entire ear. So what we could end up doing is going down to edit, and then we could do a planar cut, and then now, since we have such a huge area, it's going to put it within the center of that entire painted area. And then we could go through, and then we could actually make some adjustments and do so on and so forth. And then we could go back down to edit. Oops, nope, we don't want to do that. We're going to go back down here. Yep. And let's just go ahead and we'll do lasso again. I'm sorry for this. And we're just going to do that and that. And why is this not working now? Okay. The joys of live streaming. Let's try this again. Okay, so we're going to go up to select. We're going to go to lasso. And if we end up doing this, then now it's not doing it again. Why? What did I do wrong? I don't know. Okay. Let's just go ahead and we'll back. Like I said, I told you I wasn't a pro. Okay, let's go back. We're going to go up to lasso. Here is another way to do it. So we can click, and then we draw that line. We click and move. And if we wanted the entire ear, what we could end up doing is kind of going through like this, and boom, we would get the entire ear that way. And again, what we end up doing is we would put that planar cut, and then we could move that and rotate it to wherever we wanted. And so we could like drag it down like that. And again, what we could do is go up here to planar cut. We want to keep both. I think that's the thing that bothers me is when you change the cut type and select something, it goes back to the default setting. I wish it would just keep it to where it was. We go ahead and hit select. And again, the same thing, we've got our cut in there. And now we have to go back to edit and then separate the shells. And there is our model. So let's go back down and I'll show you some other things that we can do. And I'm just doing Control Z. Let's say do something a little bit different. See if we can't kind of show you some situations of where that selection of using the lasso. Again, we're going to go up here and we're going to target lasso. And if we see how we've got the model in the background and down here, well, if I click with the lasso, now it's only going to do it. You can't click it when it's on the model, okay? So if I come down here and then do kind of a lasso area and it has to close it, that is going to, of course, paint all the way around the bunny ear, but notice we've got this here too. So if we do our planar cut, this is interesting. So if we do our planar cut, it's going to go into the center between the ear and this. So it's not really smart enough to say it recognizes that you just wanted to do the ear because you spilled over onto the model. So what you can end up doing is, you know, kind of moving your plane and then doing that. And it's kind of like, okay, now we got to do this. And then we get down, you know, and then you could end up doing your cut. But yeah, it's kind of problematic with the lasso. But a good way to do this would be just to make sure that you're not getting any, getting that lasso onto other parts of the model. So again, we're going to go up to lasso and we're going to left click and it draws a line. We click. And again, we want to give ourselves a good area and boom. So we see that that highlighted the area that we wanted. So now we're going to go down to is edit. And again, the planar cut. And we want to keep both. And with that, we're going to have to do a little bit of an adjustment here. And I think we'll be good to go like so. And yeah, I really wish the discoloration of where you selected, you can see a very small hint of the painted area. I wish that was like a darker color so that way you can see kind of the painted area here, but it's just not as graphic, and sometimes it's hard to see. But again, what we'll end up doing is we keep both. We'll just hit accept and boom. And then of course now we have to go down to edit and then separate the shells, and then we could go through and say, okay, well now that I've got this piece, I can go down and I could do export, and then I could do the ear part 2. So we could save that, and then if we look at our file, boom, there we've got ear 1 and ear 2, and we're good to go. So yeah, practicing with that, and I guess what we could end up doing is taking a look, and I've also been practicing on how to do the connectors, and I haven't printed any of this out. All I'm doing is playing around with this as far as how to get the mechanics of, you know, doing the cuts and things like that, getting more familiar with the program. So what we're going to end up doing now is, heck, we might as well. Let's try to do the connector. And with the connector, we're going to grab the item. So we're going to select the item we want. And let's do this. And then we go to MeshMixer up on this left-hand side on the top. And we're going to go down and we're going to use, let's try because you got some different options. But wait a second. What I need to do is I need to take this because we're going to put the connector on the body side. So I'm going to select this and take that away and select the bunny. Okay, so that we've got that. And we're going to go up to MeshMixer, and we're going to go ahead, we're going to do a square, and you have to left click and hold and drag this onto the plane of where you want your connector. Now this is going to be the male part that is going to be sticking out, and boom, obviously that is too huge. So notice this little area right here, just put your cursor in the center of that, and then you drag it and you can make it as big or as small as you want. We're just going to go for that right there, and we're good to go. Now you notice that we dropped a solid. We see some of this is actually embedded into the model itself, and then we have the area that is outside the model that is protruding. And if we go up to the left here, we can see that we have, it's called a drop solid because we dropped a solid image onto the plane of our model. You could change the dimensions this way. But let's just leave it at what it was, like right there. You can also enter in and say, I want to make this a very specific size. Let's say we can do that as 2 millimeters, and we're good to go. So down here in composition mode, we have append to mesh, create new object, Boolean, union, or subtract. We want to leave it on the default of create a new object, and that will be accepted. And now basically we have these 2 items here. And if we look on this here, we can see that we have our dropped part, and then of course we have our bunny body. So what we want to end up doing is we'll select our body, we'll collect or select this part, and then another box pops up over here. And what we want to do is a Boolean function of union. So we want to combine these 2 shapes together, and once we do that, boom, now we've got this that comes up. Solution mode, precise, we leave that where it's there. Search depth, leave all of this. And what I've seen a couple of people online is to set this at 18. Now the thing is, I don't know why. And then when you get to your target edge scale, there's a number of people put 0.25. And then the merge bordering ring, they changed that to 1. And we'll go ahead and enter that. And those are the settings. Why? I'm not sure. Nobody seems to know how to explain this or why they said it. And I think it's just like me. Somebody started it a long time ago. And then next thing you know, you have other people that are doing videos, but they don't explain why or what these things are. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. So 18, 0.25, and a border merge rings of 1. And we're going to go ahead and accept that. and we're good to go. So that will actually merge and put everything in there. So now this is all together. But I made a problem. I need that square to go on the ear. So let's do so we have our dropped part. Is that the bunny part? We still have that. So now we have our part. Here's what I forgot to do. And I'll make a more polished video. I'll do another one when I get back. I'm going to have to make a duplicate of this. And like I said, I'm no pro at this. And we're going to go to Edit, and then we're going to go to Duplicate. And now that popped up another one here, and so we're going to hide that one. The reason we're going to hide that one is because we're going to need that for the ear. So we're actually going to subtract this shape out from the ear. It'll work. This is all bonus practice stuff anyway. So we have our original drop part, and then what we end up having is our bunny shell, which is not, no, I didn't want that. So there's our bunny shell, and there's our dropped part. And then what we're going to end up doing is doing the Boolean union. And again, we go back here, we're going to set this to 18 because no one explains why. 0.25. And then the merge border ring, we're going to go ahead and set that to 1. And we're going to go ahead and accept. And now this has become one joined piece. These two parts have been Boolean joined together or unionized. They got into the union, and now that is part. So you could actually go through and you could export this, and you have that part there. But now what we want to end up doing is where is our bunny ear? So we got our bunny ear, and there is our other part. So we want that part, and we want to select our bunny ear. And that's what we want to do. So we want to see these two items. So that one we want to go away, that one we want to go this one and this one. And we'll bring this to where we can see this. So now, from what I remember from memory, is we have these two items. We have our square, and then we have this. If we go to our square, if I remember correctly, we have to go to Edit. And no, there's something else that we had to do on this. There were some settings. No, it wasn't that. Now I forget what I was supposed to do. Because you have to adjust this, and what were the adjustments? No, it wasn't that. If you do analysis, edit, transform. Was it transform? No, it wasn't transform. Generate groups, make solid, hollow, add tube, unwrap. Oh, now I can't remember for the life of me. Okay, let's just select both of these. And if we go to edit, is it transform? No, it's not transform. So we want that one. No, we don't want all of them. We want that one and that one. Okay, so we select both of these. And now what we're going to do, this is it. So this window pops up. It's not really in the menu section on this left-hand side. So once you select these two things, then you come down, and what we're going to do is we're going to do the Boolean difference. So that's what kind of caught me off guard. So we'll hit the Boolean difference. And now we can see with that difference, that square is going to be recessed, or we're going to get the female part of that. And again, we're going to come down here, And I think preview iteration, this was the same thing, was 18. The edge is 0.25. And then the merge is going to be 1. But I think there was something else that needed to be done because you needed to adjust the size to make it a little bigger. What was that? No, it wasn't that. Transform. We set everything by 1 millimeter. Oh, it was the XYZ size. So with this, with the size, that was it. What we had to end up doing is this recessed area, the female portion of this, we need to make this just a tiny bit bigger. And from what I've seen, the majority of people say that you add 0.1 millimeter to this. So you do, it's already set to your uniform scaling. So I'm just going to add 0.1 millimeters and it makes it a little bit bigger. And the reason that they did this was to say that you're going to have your male is going to go into the female and, kind of like that, and that you're going to have enough room for glue and of course expansion when you're doing your print and stuff like that. So we're going to leave that there and we're going to accept that. Now it makes sense. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead. That is selected and that. So we need that and that. So now that we have, seriously? How did I do that? How did I select both? Was it that? There we go. It was shift. Okay, that's why. So click on one item, hit the shift, at least on Mac, and then click on the item so you get both of these. And then the window pops up. And then we're going to do the Boolean difference. And boom, there we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our 18. And we're going to put our 0.25. And then we're going to set our merge border ring to 1. And we should be good to go. And there we have it. So there is the recess or the female portion of the ear, and that will marry up with the body of the bunny. Now what I can end up doing is I can take this and notice over here in this box, the object viewer, it has now combined those two things into the one shape. So now I can export and we'll just call ear 1, I don't know, connector, hole, thingy, whatever. So I can do that. And let's go back to our bunny. We'll kind of zoom out here. And if we take our bunny, notice that this is connected together. So to see that this actually works, what you can end up doing is selecting, let's say, the ear, and we're going to edit and go to transform. And then what you can end up doing is moving that around, and you can see the recessed hole. And then, of course, we have the male part of that square as well. So, yeah. And if we cancel that, it'll just snap right back into place. So now what we can end up doing, we click on our bunny and we export that. Bunny body with hole. And what we'll end up doing is we'll import this into, as we've got this there. Actually, put that down there. So we've got that. We'll bring up our Creality print. We'll delete that. And we will drag our bunny with the hole and the bunny ear with that. Yes, we know that they're there. And let's just go ahead and we'll select them all. And we will scale them up, let's say 400%, just for grins. And yes, I know it's over the edge. I just want it big enough. Like, seriously. And so what we can end up seeing when we zoom in, there is, and obviously it's a low poly item there, and it's a little rough, if you ask me. Other people put sphere or the cylinder in there to be the connectors, but the square I think you would need so that way it fits into place and locks in and it won't just rotate around. But you could do the cylinder or whatever. And if we take a look at our model here for the bunny ear, we can actually see the, stop it. And we zoom in here, we can see the recessed hole. And again, it's kind of squirrely on there. And so we see that there's a bump out there. So it's not like the best in the world because it's just not the best. That's the way it is. You're going to have to line up that explicitly in that one. It's not as crisp and clean. I wish it was just really of course I'm making y'all sick now. And this says like 102 non-manifold edges down here at the bottom. Fixed model is currently only on Windows, so Creality Print needs to work on their Mac. But that's how you can end up doing that. So with that being said, play around with MeshMixer, and what you can end up doing is learning how to do all this stuff. Maybe it's just better just to cut the parts, print them out, and then you could glue them together. I don't know. I think I would want to have, some type of connector on there. Let's see if the sphere is a little bit better. Because when we zoom in and we take a look at that, that's just not like perfectly square. So that is kind of like a hokey type deal there. But let's try doing MeshMixer, and we'll go in, we'll just do the cylinder, left click and hold it onto that area. And we can either adjust it by clicking here and then dragging that in, or we can go over here to the top left and let's just say we make that 2 millimeters and we're good to go. Don't create new object, we're good. We're going to go ahead and accept. And now, because that part is done, we'll select that, and that is the drop part 1. And what we're going to end up doing is going to edit. We're going to duplicate, so that way I have a copy, and that's the other one that's going to go on the other side of the ear. That'll be the female portion. So we want that, and we want our bunny part. Those two are selected. And now what we can end up doing is this window pops up. We're going to do the Boolean joining or union. And remember, we're going to set this to 18. This is going to be 0.25. And every time I do this, I always ask the question, why? Why are these settings the way they are? And we do that. Everything is good. We hit accept. And boom, we're good to go. So now what we can end up doing is we can get rid of that, and we can go to that, and then we want our bunny ear. Not that one. Is it that one? Yep, that one. And so now, let's zoom in on this. Bring this in, kind of get a 3/4 view so you can see what's going on. Now we will select both of these. So what I ended up doing is clicking the pin that is going to be the recess, and then I hold shift and then click on there, both of those. This comes up. We're going to do the Boolean difference. Oops, I should have clicked the other one. I'm sorry. Click the model, then shift, then click the hole, and then do the difference. Imagine that. Details matter. And there we end up with that. And again, we go back through and we do our 18. We do our 0. Oh, wait a second, forgot. We had to click this, and then we had to make that adjustment. Was it the transform? Yes, it was. So on the other one, because that was the male, we need to make this one bigger, the bigger hole, so it's 2.1. Uniform scaling, so we're just going to go ahead and hit enter. So all of those end up being 2.1, which is good. And there we've got the room, so we've got a little bit of wiggle room. So now we click the model, shift, click that. We'll do the Boolean difference, and there is our hole. Good to go. There are some times where I have had some instances during practice where you might get some holes on this, and what you could end up doing is actually do an analysis. So if we go down here to analysis, like let's say you see some of the edges and it might be a hole. So in other words, it might need to be fixed. Go down here to the left where it says analysis, and then what you can end up doing is, nope, that's not it either. Oh, we had to join these two things. That's why. So we had to select both of these. No, that and that. Now, what was it? We did the difference. But how did we? Yeah, we did the difference. 18, 0.25. That, and that ends up being 1. We accept that. And now, so now that's all one part. Okay. So with that, if there's any holes, and there's a couple times where this has happened, let me see if it'll work. So hit analysis, it comes up with this menu, and then it comes up with inspector, and then you could do auto repair. And so you could do the small threshold, and you could set that. The 0.01 seems to work really well as far as flat fill. That's the default, minimal, flat, smooth. The flat fill works well for flat areas. So that seems to be the best so far. And if you hit auto repair all, and what it'll end up doing is if there were any holes in there, it would fill those in so that you don't have to do a repair job on your or in your slicer program. So then what we could end up doing is just going through and exporting that as we wanted to. So yeah, that's what we end up having, and boom, we've got our bunny. So a little practice bunny there, and we're able to see all that stuff. Again, what we could end up doing is, what is this? Transform? I think it has to go back to edit. And if we do transform, we can move this away, and we can see how our hole in the bunny ear, and then we can also see the male part that is extruding out. And yeah, the extruded, the thing that's sticking out goes into the hole, and bunnies replicate like bunnies. I don't know if you get that. Okay, so anyway, that's what we got going on with that. A little bit of MeshMixer, and how to cut up models and how to actually do those connectors. I still need a lot of work, but the cool thing is with doing these videos and also practicing on my own is that it ends up, I get to practice. And the thing I think that's problematic with MeshMixer is the fact that the menu system doesn't show all the things. So you get your one menu system on the left-hand side, but sometimes what you need to do is select those two different items, and then it comes up with a whole nother menu that isn't accessible any other way. So I think that's not usually the case. Usually what you can do in computer programs or software is that you click on the item, and all of the menus will show up in some way, shape, or form. You know, you click on this and a menu populates, and then it populates and shows you everything that you can do. If you select two items, then it should be a thing that you see, but they just don't do that. So it's a little bit different than the other software that I've done, other programs, Tinkercad, you know, all the stuff, you know, Microsoft Word and all that. Even in Slicer Pro programs, it's a little bit different. So the MeshMixer is indeed a little bit different, and it's a little bit confusing, as you saw. But then again, sometimes it doesn't take a lot to confuse me. But when I first started this, and I downloaded a while back, and when I opened it up, because usually I'm pretty good on software, I opened it up and started doing stuff, and it was like, good Lord, how in the hell does this work? I have no clue. You know, it wasn't really user intuitive, user friendly. So that got me onto, and I just shelved it. I ended up just shelving that for a number of months and just forget that. I don't even want to do MeshMixer. And then it ends up that as I was going through, and then of course doing some larger models, and I want to do like a 5-foot tall Hulk. So that is going to require doing some cutting. And either I'm going to do it in the slicer, or I'm going to have to find like Luban, but that's a paid service, and I hate subscription programs and stuff like this. Just let me pay one price. But I think they do. Luban has a pay one price, but it's some god awful $300-400 or something. It just really gets you over a barrel. But the MeshMixer is something that is an alternative to cutting within your slicer and having more control on where your slicing goes. So, for example, let's see if we can. Let's see. Speed calibration for it's a file, new project. Let's see if we can calibrate help. What was it in? Oh, that's it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here we are, and this is the build plate for my K2 Plus. So if we left click, of course now it's not going to do it. Seriously. Just go home, click, there we go, add models. So if you add a model, and let's see, we do the bunny body. That's not what I want to do. What was the one they had test models? There it is. Yeah, let's just do, so Benchy would be good. They don't have a bunny. I guess we'll just do, let's just do a complex overhang one. So this is a little test that you can do, and I'll show you what I'm talking about in regards to, let's just scale this up to 100%. So we get a little bit different there. And let's see, let's just make this gray so that way it's a little bit easier on the eyes. And if we were going to go through and cut this, what we could end up doing is we can see up here on the top, and we can hit the cut. And then what comes up is the planar cut. And so, we can rotate this around, which is fine. And, we could do this in different positions. But let's say we wanted to cut one certain thing on here. Of course, this is all being squirrely on me. And you can adjust this. But when you run into situations like, say, I wanted to make a cut just like this, exactly in this area, maybe take it up, down, but then I notice that on this side here, it's going to cut these items here. So I can go ahead and do my cut, and we want to, you could add connectors and stuff like that. So, but the problem is that if you perform the cut, now the problem is, come on. Yes, I know. I know it's too close. Okay, we'll just separate it that way. But as we notice here, the other things that also got cut on that same plane are now here. So if I wanted to separate these things, and maybe I'm just doing something wrong, but now I would have to go through, and then I do my cut again. There we go. And then I'd have to move this and go like this, and then do the cut. And then now I could have the separate parts on this, which is, okay, where is it? There it is. I got it all catty, screwed up and stuff. So now I can end up doing that. But now with this part, I still have those two connected, so I'd have to do a planar cut again. And then it's like, oh, well, those pieces are cut off. So now I'd have to import this whole thing again or make clones. And you see what I'm getting at? It just ends up, it's problematic on the cutting of this. I really wish that slicer programs would end up to where we have a planar cut And again, we've got the plane there, and it's going to cut everything on that plane. If there was a way to make the edges of the plane reduce down, and so that you could drag them. So let's say if I wanted to cut just this tower, and I didn't want to cut this or this, I could actually take the edge of this plane, like if there was a little adjustment thing, that I could bring this in, so that way I could reduce the area of the plane and then do my cut without interfering on the other parts of the model. That would be awesome. And I haven't seen any slicer program do that, and that's the reason why I ended up having to go to MeshMixer. So yeah, that's kind of the whole reasoning behind that. So the MeshMixer, even though it's not as user intuitive as I would like it to be, you can still do your cuts, and you can import. Matter of fact, I imported Viking Dude here and was playing and doing the different cuts as, like, you know, cutting out the arm and getting more precise cuts instead of just doing like a planar cut across the board, because this would be problematic, because if I cut right across the middle, then it's going to cut the axe, and it's going to cut the hand, and it's going to cut part of this, and it's just not a good thing. So if you understand what I'm saying, that's why I like the MeshMixer and being able to paint around the individual item where you want that cut specifically. That's where MeshMixer really comes into play with that. So yeah, the MeshMixer, MM, really comes into play. And the more I play with it and the more I get used to it, the better I'm getting. Man, I hated watching the videos, because the other videos that I watch, I'll do a more polished version of this once I get better at it. But the other ones are like, okay, now click on the model, and then you're going to go ahead and you're going to go select, and then they paint, and they've already done it. And it's at such a speed, I had to like slow it down to 50% speed to actually follow and see where their cursor was going and what they were, hit the selector, hit lasso. There were some people that just didn't explain any of that stuff with MeshMixer. So, but that's what we got going on. I mean, it is what it is. So hopefully I can make a little bit better video. And the more practice, the better I get, and maybe the better and easier it will be for you to learn how to use MeshMixer. Good Lord. So anyway, that's going to be it for today. Some fun stuff for those of you that are out there. Like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. That would be the biggest thing that you could do for me. You could leave comments. If you absolutely need to get in contact with me for any reason whatsoever, there's the email address, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. And I answer every single email, guaranteed, even from crazy people. Because if we're into this and the stuff that I do, we're all a little bit crazy. So that means we're all part of the same family. With that, if you really want to do me a solid, you could buy me a coffee, link in the description box. And as you can see, this ticker there, some people have bought me, and you can see all those people are being awesome. And there's actually people that have bought me multiple coffees, and they are even more awesome than that. So you could be a part of that group as well. But other than that, questions on being retired overseas in Korea, check out my channel. I do resin printing, 3D printing, some miniature painting stuff, but my pile of shame has gotten infinitely larger with the FDM printer. That pile of shame just never goes away. But to stay updated, like and subscribe. And with that, thanks for watching. I appreciate that. It gives me something to do, and I like the conversations that we can have on these videos and stuff like that. I appreciate that. So it's a win-win. All right, with that said, I got to get some breakfast and head to the gym, and we'll see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah, stumbled through that one pretty good.